Continuing our series on the survey of the Bible, the Old Testament books of the law. Timeline for this, these 5 books is basically Adam up until the end of Moses' life. So most Christians don't pay attention to dates because they're so old and they believe the dates, they just don't matter. However, dates can help us put things in perspective, especially in relation to other world events. So I'm going to give you some timelines throughout this series. And they're going to be rough estimates. Different dates are given by various scholars, but they generally agree, somewhat. For example, very 4 dates that I think you should remember. Adam left the Garden of Eden about 6,000 BC. Noah was in the ark about 3,000 BC. That's just a few generations after Adam, but they lived a long time back then. 3,000 years between Adam and Noah. And if you've ever seen one of my studies on Noah or Genesis, Noah's grandfather could have talked to Adam. We don't know if he did, but he could have. They were alive at the same time. That's amazing. Abraham was about 1,000 years after Noah, so 2000 BC. And Moses was 450 years or so later, about 1550 BC. There you go. First 5 books. They don't indicate who wrote them, but tradition tells us, and the Jews are great at tradition, keeping things written down and straight. Usually if I say Old Testament and I say tradition, it's Jewish tradition. Tradition tells us they were written by Moses after the Exodus from Egypt, although the last few words record Moses' death, so they were almost certainly written by Joshua. Pentateuch. That's another name for the first 5 books. It's a Greek word that's frequently used for these books. And we'll get to more on that later, but it basically means 5 scrolls. That name was first used in the Septuagint, which is true of many of our book names. It's an adaptation of a Hebrew expression that is basically 5/5 of the law, indicating these books are to be taken as one entity. Books of Moses' Law, another name. But that's for the last 4 of these 5 books. That's the first 5th is everything before Moses, and the last 4 are Moses. Torah, another name for these first 5 books. They're considered very holy by the Jews, and this basically is to them the law. This is it. This is the bottom line for them, and they call it the Torah, which is Hebrew for teaching. The Hebrew names of the first 5 books of the Torah are based on the first verse of each book. So the English names are taken from the Greek Septuagint and reflect the theme of each book. So let me explain. Genesis. First off, let me tell you this. These 5 books have a combined 187 chapters. So if you want to study the whole thing, 187 chapters. That's not too bad. The next section is 12 books, the books of history, and they got 250 chapters, I think. Anyway, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, those are the Septuagint names. They mean creation, exit, Levitical law, numbering, and second law. But the Hebrew names for Genesis would be Bereshit. It means in the beginning. That's the first word or phrase, first word that starts the book of Genesis. The first word in the book of Exodus is Shemat, which means names, because Moses named the leaders of the tribes of Israel. Leviticus, the first word is Be'ikra, which means he called. And there you go. Numbers, the first word is Bamidbar. It means in the wilderness. And Deuteronomy, Devarim, means the things. So the first word in Deuteronomy was things. So Genesis is the first book in the Bible. And by the way, when I say first word, I mean in the Hebrew Bible, not in yours necessarily. Genesis is the first book in the Bible, as in Genesis, the beginning of all things. Septuagint calls this book the book of creation, the creation of everything, beginning of everything. In Hebrew, I said it's Bereshit, which means in the beginning. Genesis reveals information regarding God and his relationship with mankind, his purpose for his creation. In Genesis, society was patriarch-based, meaning the father was the leader of his clan. It contains the story of Adam and Eve and significant time spent on Noah. And then you have the story of the Tower of Babel. Then we get in the whole life of Abraham. That's about half of the book. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then it's Jacob's sons for whom the 12 tribes of Israel are named. And then the last, about a quarter of the book is the story of Abraham's great-grandson Joseph and his time in Hebrew. While in Egypt, the Israelites were called Habiru, meaning slave. Some scholars dispute that. I don't know, it probably makes sense. I don't know. During the next 4 books, the Israelite society becomes a theocratic society, meaning one based upon religion led by God and his chosen leaders, or leader in this case. In Exodus begins about 430 years after Genesis ends. The sons of Israel were, I bet you thought it was 400 years. I was taught that. Then I read the Bible. It's 430 years they spent in Egypt. The sons of Israel were slaves in Egypt, and Moses led them out of Egypt. Great story found in the Pentateuch. In the 4 books that follow Genesis. Describe the Israelites leaving Egypt and traveling over a 40-year period before entering the Promised Land. Didn't have to be that long, but they were knotheads. Exodus shows the tribes of Israel forming into a nation which is based upon their religious identity. They've been slaves, and now Moses leads them into a theocratic society and reveals God's law to the Israelites. Leviticus is a book that's primarily just information regarding priests and what they wear and the tabernacle and ceremonial laws, moral laws for the people. The 4th book of the Bible is called Numbers. It contains many laws interspersed throughout the book. It describes why the Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years and recounts portions of their journey. If you want to read just about the journey, It's predominantly in Exodus and Numbers with a little bit in Deuteronomy, but it's got a lot of other things interspersed in each of those books. Numbers also shows political, social, family groupings. It's called Numbers because it begins with a census and ends with a census. So a census when they left Egypt, and a census when they went into the promised land, or just before. Deuteronomy is the last book of the Pentateuch. It's mostly composed of speeches by Moses or teachings by Moses regarding God's laws. It has a little bit about the wanderings in the wilderness, and it finishes with Joshua being named as Moses' successor. So there you go. Nice short lesson. I hope you enjoy that one. You take care of yourself. And have a good day tomorrow and a better day day after. Bye now.